Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. Have you ever looked into the mirror and felt that the person staring back wasn't truly you? Have you ever asked yourself, who was I before someone gave me a name? What am I when I'm no longer defined by roles, titles, gender, my past, or even my pain? Maybe you're living a full life. You have a job, friends, responsibilities. But deep down, there's a quiet emptiness you can't quite name. So you search through meditation, books, podcasts, travel, healing, and yet something still feels missing, a piece that doesn't quite fit. Then one day, seemingly by chance, you hear a phrase, Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. It's not advice, not a philosophy. It's a sacred reminder that you were never broken. You were never lacking. You just forgot. You forgot that you are that. The one that cannot be hurt, cannot be lost, and never needs to become anything else. In today's video, we'll go on a journey together, not to become someone new, but to remember who you've always been. Tat Tvam Asi. And if you truly understand what it means, your life will never be the same again. The story of Jonah. Jonah, a man who did everything right, but was never truly himself. Jonah, 38 years old, was the kind of man most people would say, he's doing well. He was the head of engineering at a mid-sized digital media firm in Seattle. He drove the same silver gray SUV to work every day. His routine hadn't changed in 4 years. 6:10 a.m. He'd wake up, no alarm. 6:15. Brew a cup of medium roast Colombian coffee, drinking it in silence, staring out the fogged-up window. 6:45. Wake his son for school, forcing a polite smile and a weather-related comment. 7:10. Leave the house while his wife prepared breakfast. They'd pass each other with a faint smile. No one was wrong. No one was cruel. They just didn't have much left to talk about. Jonah didn't hate his job. He managed a team of 12 engineers. They respected him. He was organized, calm in every meeting. He submitted 2 reports per week, kept projects on track, updated systems. Every month, he hit 92% of his KPIs. But in everything he did, nothing ever seemed to touch him. I don't hate what I do. I just don't feel real while doing it. The worst part wasn't the repetition. It was the absence of Jonah in Jonah's life. Each day, something seemed to dissolve a little. An email sent with the wrong name. A meeting where his boss called him the gatekeeper of tech, as if he were just a spam filter. A dinner with his wife and son. Mostly silence, with everyone eventually glued to their phones. "Why aren't you saying anything, Dad?" his son asked. "Nothing to say," Jonah replied. He didn't realize it was the 7th time this month he'd given that exact answer. None of these small things were enough to break a man. But they slowly eroded his sense of self. The breaking point came the Monday before. Jonah was driving to work, like always. He passed a minor car accident. A man stood beside his damaged vehicle, looking stunned, hollow, like he'd lost something far greater than a car. Jonah saw him. And suddenly, tears welled up. He didn't know why, no reason. He didn't even know the man. He just saw himself. Jonah still went to the office that day. But sitting in front of his screen, everything felt unreal. The lines of code, the emails, the phrases, "Sure, I'll handle that." It was a life in motion, with no one truly living inside it. That night he returned home, took off his shoes, stood in the hallway. He heard the TV from the living room, smelled stir-fry from the kitchen, and realized no one in this house was truly present. Not his wife, not his child, not himself. He went upstairs, opened his laptop, typed, "How to come back to yourself." As if by fate, Google returned a phrase, Tat Tvam Asi, You are that. Jonah didn't understand it. But somehow, the words made it hard to breathe. Something deep inside, long asleep, was stirred. The next morning, Jonah didn't go to work. He didn't call in sick, didn't say a word to his wife. He packed a small bag, clothes, a water bottle, a notebook, got in his car, and drove out of the city with no destination. Jonah wasn't leaving to find something new. He left because he couldn't keep pretending to be someone he no longer recognized. The turning point. Jonah didn't know how long he'd been driving, but by the time he stopped, night had fallen. It was a nameless town near the Olympic Mountains. No signs, no GPS signal, just silence. He found an old roadside inn, rented a room with a small window facing a pine forest. For the first 3 days, he just slept, woke up, drank water, and went back to sleep. No news, no phone, no texts from his wife or boss. Jonah didn't care anymore. He had unplugged himself from the world. By the 4th day, he started walking. Every morning, Jonah stepped into the forest. An old trail, blanketed in fallen leaves and mist. No goal, no compass, just a quiet calling from deep inside. One rainy afternoon, he took shelter beneath a wooden overhang, probably the remains of some long-collapsed cabin. He sat there, breathing, no thoughts, no feelings. Then a voice came from behind. "You like the sound of rain, too?" Startled, Jonah turned. A boy, maybe 10 years old, stood there, wearing an oversized gray cloak, soaked, yet strangely serene. The boy was blind, but his face was calm, almost radiant. "Where are you from?" Jonah asked, glancing around, no one else in sight. "I'm from here," the boy said. "Whenever it rains, I like to come." Jonah chuckled, his first real laugh in months. "Aren't you afraid of getting lost? You can't see." The boy smiled, voice clear as water. "I don't see with my eyes. I know I am light." Jonah froze. "What did you say?" he asked. "I don't see my face in the mirror like others do, but I know I am light." Jonah's heart clenched. "What about you, sir?" the boy asked. "Do you know what you are?" Jonah wanted to answer, but he couldn't. Every label he had used to define himself. Husband, father, manager, quiet one, reliable one, always on-time one. The one who endures. They all fell away, like dead leaves. The boy stood calmly. "I see a lot of grown-ups. They forget what they are. They keep playing roles. And after a while, they think they are the role." Then he said, "There's a phrase you should hear. I hear it when the rain falls on my heart." He stepped closer, placed his small hand on Jonah's chest, as if unlocking a door that had been sealed for a long, long time. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that. You don't need to become someone else. You just need to remember. A strong gust of wind blew through the trees. Leaves whirled around them. And something inside Jonah broke. Not in despair, but like a cage that finally cracked open. He cried, not out of sadness, but because he felt himself returning. When he looked up, the boy was gone. Only the sound of rain remained. And one sentence echoed louder than thunder in Jonah's heart. You are that. Awakening. Presence. Light. Jonah sat there still, not out of fear, but because he knew. He could never go back. He could no longer be the man who was always on time but wrong about himself. Couldn't live in a house where no one was truly home. Couldn't wear the mask of the one who knows in meetings while inside he was hollow. The words, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that, were not just a message. They were a shard of truth lodged in his soul, not showing him his reflection, but the clean, open space behind every identity. For the first time in his life, Jonah didn't try to understand. He simply breathed, No analysis, no explanation. Just silence. And a strange feeling. I am coming home. Not to a place, but to my being. The next morning, the sky was clear. Jonah walked outside, found a small hill behind the inn, and sat. No meditation, no prayer. Just his hand resting on his chest. And he could feel it. Something real was breathing inside him. Memories returned. The night he cried in darkness, alone. The argument with his wife, when he couldn't admit the truth. The time he laughed at a company party while screaming inside, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be this. They all came back, but they didn't hurt anymore. They passed like clouds, because he was no longer the stormy sky. He was the space behind it, unburdened, still, untouched. He wrote in his notebook, They call me husband, father, employee. But today, I don't need to be called anything. I remember now, I am that. A week later, Jonah returned to the city, not to ask for his job back, not to explain, just to live, authentically, from within. He still lived in the same house, still saw his wife and son. But for the first time, he really heard their voices, instead of wondering how to respond. He still went to work, but he was no longer the tech gatekeeper. He was someone present, in every breath. He didn't become a guru. He didn't quit his job to move to India. He didn't write a book called Awaken Your True Self in 21 Days. Jonah simply lived. One morning, while driving his son to school, the boy looked at him and said, Dad, you look different today, like you're glowing or something. Jonah smiled. Son, the light's not on me, it's just, I'm no longer covering it up. That evening, Jonah wrote one last line in his notebook. I used to think I had to become someone, but all along, I just had to remember I never stopped being that. Tat Tvam Asi. The true meaning of Tat Tvam Asi. Tat Tvam Asi. At first, it may sound like an ancient mantra, but in truth, it's an answer. An answer to the deepest pain many of us quietly carry. Who am I? Am I even real? Where is my worth? When everything around me falls apart, a simple definition. Tat Tvam Asi is Sanskrit. It means you are that. That here does not refer to an object or a fixed role. It points to the purest essence, the ultimate self, beyond name, beyond gender, beyond past, beyond future. It is the part of you that was never born and can never die. The part that cannot be wounded by failure or lost in success. 2. The modern human dilemma. We often believe we are the things we do. I'm a teacher. I'm an engineer. I'm sad, so I must be weak. I'm someone's partner, someone's child. But when one of those roles crumbles, we panic. If I'm no longer that, then who am I? Tat Tvam Asi reminds you. You were never the role. You are the stage on which all roles appear and vanish. 3 everyday examples. Clear as daylight. The phone and the screen. You're using your phone. There are apps, messages, images. But if you delete everything, the screen remains. You are not the apps. You are the screen. Silent, yet always present. Rain is not the sky. Emotions come like rain. Sadness, anger, fear. But you are not the rain. You are the sky. Rain may pass through, but it never defines the sky. The mirror and reflections. You see your reflection in a mirror. If you wipe the mirror, the image disappears. But the mirror remains. Your roles, names, and thoughts are reflections. But you are the mirror. The still knowing presence. 4. So what does Tat Tvam Asi really teach? Not to escape the world, not to deny identity, but to live fully, without losing your true self. Be present, without becoming your role. Accept life, without getting stuck in it. 5. What happens when you truly understand? You are that. Emotions no longer control you so easily. You know who you are, even when everything around you shifts. You become free because you no longer need to become someone to be worthy. You have always been that, but you forgot. And every time you enter deep silence, that calls you back, through its own pure presence. Living in the world, remembering the self, applying Tat Tvam Asi. Modern life turns us into many things. We become employees, parents, the polite one, the one who must succeed. And day by day, we forget a seemingly simple truth. Who am I if I am none of these roles? When you hear the phrase, Tat Tvam Asi, you are that. Don't rush to understand it with the mind. Let it drop into your heart, like a ripple falling into a still lake, awakening a quiet, powerful question within. Could it be that I've always been something deeper, wider, stiller than all of this? We don't need to abandon life. We don't need to run away from the world. We don't need to go far. We simply need to pause, right here, in this moment, to see clearly. In the midst of 1,000 tasks, I can still be myself. Amid the noise of expectations, I can still hear the voice of my being. When someone misunderstands you, instead of reacting, whisper inwardly, I am not the image they see. I am the space that is aware of it all. When you feel tired from trying to please everyone, gently place a hand on your heart and ask, right now, am I living truthfully? And each night before you sleep, remind yourself, I am not my achievements. I am not my failures. I am not my emotions. I am not my roles. I am that, present, without effort, without needing to prove. You don't need to become better, smarter, or more recognized to deserve the light. Because you are the light, you don't need to learn how to return to yourself, because you've never truly left. And starting today, whether you're washing dishes, walking, or simply breathing, gently remember, no need to say it aloud. Just recall it with your awareness. Tat Tvam Asi, I am that. The Buddhist view of Tat Tvam Asi. Throughout the spiritual history of the East, two great traditions have searched for the answer to humanity's most fundamental question. Who am I? Vedic philosophy and Buddhist teachings. Though different in language and expression, both point toward the same unshakable truth. People don't suffer because of circumstances. They suffer because they do not know who they are. The phrase Tat Tvam Asi, you are that, is one of the deepest revelations in the Vedas. It is not an invitation to become something new. It is a call to awaken, to remember that you have always been that, the unborn, undying, formless, limitless essence. And beautifully, that same insight echoes in the teachings of the Buddha. He may not have used the words Tat Tvam Asi, but he said, within each being is the Buddha nature. To see the mind is to see the Buddha. The mind is originally pure. It is only clouded by delusion. If the Vedas speak of Atman, the true self that merges with Brahman, then Buddhism speaks of the true mind, the Tathagatagarbha, the ever-present essence, whether one is awakened or still lost in illusion. Some say, Buddhism denies the self while Vedanta affirms it. But in truth, both traditions are pointing to the same realization. You are not the role you play. You are the stillness behind all forms. And when you finally let go of who you think you are, you begin to see, you are that. Tat Tvam Asi. Awakening in everyday life, you have always been that. Maybe the world has never been louder than it is today. We race through 1,000 roles: parent, worker, peacemaker, success chaser, and somewhere along the way, we forget who's standing behind all these roles. Maybe you're someone who's always there for others. Maybe you're the one who never gets angry. Maybe you're the one who's always on time, always rational, always okay. But beneath all of that, there is a part of you that doesn't need to try so hard to exist. A part that's always present, even when you're hurting, afraid, or smiling. A part that is silent, vast, nameless, and yet has always been truly you. And today, if you've ever felt lost in this life, if you've ever asked yourself, who am I in all of this? Then pause, be still, and listen closely to that quiet whisper. You are that. Tat Tvam Asi. You don't need to find something outside yourself to become someone. You only need to remember what you have always been, since the moment you were born, and forever after. If you saw yourself in Jonah, if something inside you stirred during this story, leave a comment. Let's wake up together. And if you know someone who's lost, who's drifting, send them this video. Who knows? Maybe the words, "You are that," will awaken a tired soul who's simply forgotten their light. This is the noble wisdom path, where philosophy is not just something to learn, but something to come home to. Thank you for listening. See you in the next episode of the 4 Great Sayings series. Tat Tvam Asi. You are that.